It is March 4th, 2024, and all kinds of things are going on in the world. Like I was telling one of our co founders, there's all kinds of things happening, including a potential Supreme Court ruling coming down this hour. But we'll see what happens in that regards if it actually comes down this hour. But this could be impacting the notion of a Trump presidency. I also heard earlier today that I believe Nikki Haley said that she is not obligated to vote for Trump because I think there was that pledge about supporting the candidate that wins, and apparently she is starting to back off of that pledge and all along those lines. But it'll be interesting to see if that is the case and what goes on in that regards. But definitely, there's a lot of things happening in the world, as I said, including some things that are going on in Israel and Ukraine and a number of other places. As a matter of fact, the Netanyahu rival, Benny Gantz, is to meet U.S. leaders, and apparently that leader of Israel is fuming over Gantz's trip to U.S. planned without his approval. So definitely that is something that is going on. And Harris, one of our leaders, is to meet with key Israeli officials in D.C. amid a White House push for a Gaza ceasefire. So we do see that that is still in the news as well. Folks are trying to get this Gaza ceasefire to come through and all along those lines. And apparently, the Gaza war is shifting ties between the secular and the ultra Orthodox Israelis. An extremist Haredim blocked a major highway for hours, and they said, we will die and not enlist." And Israel's defense minister Gallant has trapped Gantz and rebelled against Netanyahu. So definitely that is something that is going on. So it seems like there might be some kind of disruption in that space. And war is apparently spurring anger over Israeli military exemption for those that are ultra orthodox. And the Kremlin says German recordings shows intent to strike Russia. So that's something else that's going on. So we got one of those military leaks, and the Kremlin, it says the German military leak shows the West plan to strike Russia, and Berlin denies ambassador has been summoned. So Germany is under pressure to explain their intercepted phone call. So it looks like there's another one of those military leaks going on as well. And apparently, Malaysia may be renewing a hunt for a missing flight, the MH370, that has been gone for 10 years. So we need to go again, is what Australians who led the MH370 search said as they joined calls for fresh efforts to find the plane. So even though it's been missing for a decade, I'm sure that family members would like to know what happened on that perilous flight and where it has gone down and all along those lines. You know, we've got a lot of discussions around abortion here in the United States, but it's not just an issue in the United States, because apparently the fine folks over there in France have voted on making abortion a constitutional right. That's right. France is about to enshrine abortion rights in its constitution. So apparently the French lawmakers are gathering for a historic vote that will make abortion a constitutional right. I wonder whether if that would either happen that it was a constitutional right to have one or to not have one in the United States, since we know that that is a hot button issue in our political landscape, even here in the United States. But it does look like France is going to enshrine it into their constitution, the right to have an abortion. And Xi Jinping is going to resist market pressure to step up China stimulus efforts. So China is to unveil its GDP target and avoid bazooka stimulus at meetings. So definitely that is something that is going on. So a lot of people are dealing with economic issues, not just here in the United States, but around the world. So China is seeking ways to revive a slowing economy and salvage property market as the annual Congress convenes. So definitely that is something that is going on in the news and all along those lines. And it looks like India has arrested 3 men for alleged gang rape of a foreign tourist. So Spanish tourist camping with her husband is gang raped in India, and apparently 3 have been arrested. And there is outrage over Brazilian tourist gang rapes that took place in that area. And definitely there should be outrage on such kinds of crimes. And Rwanda has a plan to cost the UK 1.8 million for each asylum seeker. So apparently that is something going on. So apparently the US government's plans to send migrants to Rwanda could cost $363 million, according to a watchdog report, and all along those lines. So yeah, I guess Rwanda is saying you can send them over here if you want to, but you need to pay us some money in order to take them. And it is a significant amount of money that they want, and all along those lines. So it'll be interesting to see what folks have to say about that. But definitely, I also saw that Haiti was in the news. Apparently, there has been a massive jailbreak, and they have declared a state of emergency after armed gangs stormed two of the country's largest prisons. And apparently, they released a whole lot of people. So, Haiti government said Sunday that two prisons, one in the capital of Port-au-Prince and another in nearby Croix de Becoit, were overrun by gang members over the weekend, according to multiple media reports. Nearly all the 4,000 inmates at Haiti's National Penitentiary in Port-au-Prince were thought to have escaped. And the UN has warned the Haitian government's presence continues to erode, with lawlessness and extreme gang violence casting a long shadow over everyday life in the crisis-stricken country. So there is a 72-hour state of emergency declared in Haiti after that takeover of those prisons, or actually the release of those prisoners, I should say, and all along those lines. So the Haiti government is on Sunday imposed a state of emergency and a nighttime curfew in an attempt to restore order, with Finance Minister Patrick Boisvert reportedly calling on police to use all legal means to recapture the prisoners and enforce the curfew, according to Al Jazeera. Boisvert is in temporary charge of the Haitian government, while Prime Minister Ariel Henry is on an overseas trip to Kenya, looking to rouse support for a UN-backed security force to help prop the country after years of deadly gang violence. So that's just some of the news items that I got to. I'm sure I'll get to some other ones as well. But right now, let me bring in the folks that are with me and all along those lines and see what they've got to say about a number of the things going on. I see that we've actually got Dan Worthington with us here today as well. So always good to see new and interesting people with us and all along those lines. But we've got Rick Rosner as well. So like I said, there was a number of things, and we're waiting to hear from the Supreme Court as to whether they are going to issue this ruling.
Mark, just hit the wire a couple minutes ago. Trump versus Anderson, which is the name of the case where Trump was booted out of Colorado. Trump won, not a majority decision, but a unanimous decision, which is, by the way, what I predicted. That winners. And because I have his portfolio of litigation, I go, he's got winners, he's got losers. This I predicted to be a winner. Prediction came true, but not only did it come true, 9-0. All of them agreed that Colorado doesn't have the power to do this. Not a surprise. But guess what? You know, it just gives him more cannon fodder out on the campaign trail. So this was, again, what I call a backfire by the Democrats who do incredibly stupid things, like try to throw them off the ballot. I know decision. You can read it. It just hit the
I would definitely read it and everything. Well, speaking of stupid decisions, and I love to hear both Dan and Rick's thoughts, but I had also read recently that apparently Nikki Haley is saying that she is not obligated, and I know they all took that pledge to actually declare her support for Trump should he win, and it does look like he will be winning the nomination. But I did hear that she is saying that she is not obligated to honor that particular pledge. But I was just wondering y'all's take on that, and is this something that might backfire on her if she's got vice presidential ambitions?
Yeah, Trump is unpredictable in making decisions like VP, and taking her as VP would give him the best chance of winning. But he does a lot of stuff, you know. Who knows?
What's your take, Dan?
What's your take, Dan?
Well, I think she's not been wise about how she's approached her campaign at all, and you know, I think that her steps now are a political death knell for any future plans for her to run for office, because she is on the fringe of the Republican Party. She's a Romney Republican. And that's just not acceptable to the Republican Party now. The Never Trumpers are their hopes to detract Trump are gone. Whether Trump wins this the election in the fall, I don't know. It's unfortunate it's come to this, that we have these two difficult people likely going to be the candidates for the highest office in the United States, because either way it goes is going to be terribly disruptive to the American people, and it's going to be difficult to handle. We can't handle 4 more years of Biden. It's just not going to happen. Trump, he's a lot of bluster. He didn't do the country. He had a lot of good policies. If he had kept his big mouth shut, he'd actually have a legacy. But the problem is he made himself a target to the to the CIA and NSA and everybody else out of the box by taking on the deep state and everybody. And so he's been framed right and left. And what did he expect? You ask a fight from powerful people, what do you get? You get a fight for powerful people. You get framed for this and that. It just is what it is, right? I mean, that's just stupid.
No, it is what it is, like you said, and everything. I was going to get to a North Carolina race in a minute and everything, but before I get to that, apparently Nikki Haley did end Trump's streak, and I am not surprised because of the nature of the victory that she had and where the victory was. But she did win the Washington, D.C. primary, ending Trump's streak. But there is some conversation, and maybe we'll have to talk to Dave Walker when we have the Economics Monday, and I kind of alluded to it on last week, but there is some people that are saying that her bid for the GOP nomination is over, but her no label run could be just starting. So there is the possibility that she might be still in the race and going to run as a alternate candidate and everything. So I do know that I asked.
She said no.
Also, there are sore loser laws that keep her off the ballot in states. You can't lose your party.
Assuming those sore loser laws are legal after Trump versus Anderson. But no matter who wins, there's a major problem that they're not addressing or solving. They show immigration is the number one problem, but here's the number one problem. We have a $34 trillion debt. And if the math is correct, and I use the math, $1 trillion is added every 100 days to our national debt.
The immigration problem
worse than climate change. This is happening.
The immigration problem adds to that problem, though, Nick, because of this government's free money policies for all these immigrants. It's really stupid.
I agree with you. I agree with you, Dan. I think what Biden did in terms of his corporate welfare and his just mass spending is absolutely horrible. And we're not addressing immigration, but I have an idea how to address immigration. Rather than say you can't come in, we charge them to come in just like you do an airplane ticket. You get your first class, $100,000.
Hey, Nick, hold on a second. Nick, hold on a second. Nick, hold on a second. Are you borrowing from Rwanda?
No more liberal stuff.
Nick, are you borrowing from Rwanda? Because didn't you just hear what I just said?
Maybe on immigration.
So that's an idea.
Nick, Nick and Dan, hold on a second. Are you borrowing from Rwanda?
No.
Guess what I just said earlier? Rwanda is charging $10,000. They spend $6,000 for the coyote to bring them to the border.
No.
Or 20,000.
Garbage. This is a capitalist country. If you want to come in, you pay. If you can't pay,
hold on a second, Nick.
Save some money and then come back and talk.
It's called a golden.
The border is closed, baby.
It's called a golden.
Same
time
deal.
out. Time out.
Down, make them pay down that national debt, baby.
Nick and Rick.
A lot of countries have a golden visa where if you bring them enough money, $500,000 generally, sometimes $1 million, they'll let you stay. I want to talk about
Rick. I just said that because that's what Rwanda apparently is doing. Because Rwanda is saying, you can send all the refugees you want over to Rwanda, but you have to pay a significant amount of money for each person that you send over. So that's apparently what Rwanda is doing with the fine folks, I believe, is over there from the UK. So the UK is
with the DC primary, only 2,000. Washington D.C. is only 8% Republican, maybe less. Only 2,000 people voted in that primary where Nikki Haley beat Trump 2-1, like 1,200 votes to 600 votes. So it's fairly meaningless. But Dan mentioned that, that we have two candidates that have high disapproval. But it's not just the candidates, it's the divisive environment we're in. They've been polling presidential approval since Franklin Roosevelt. And on average, the approval of a president has gone down president by president as we've gotten more and more divided and pissed off at each other. So there's no magic candidate out there that would somehow be able to win the approval of both sides. The last time somebody had universal approval was George W. Bush right after 9/11, when the country pulled together to support him. And that lasted, I don't know, less than a year.
Hey,
Yeah,
Rick, and hold on a second. Rick and Dan, along those same lines.
Solve problems is good ideas and having some ideas or any ideas. These people have no ideas. Now, this is an idea. Immigration, pay to come in. In other words, the thing is, right now, we're spending an enormous amount of time, effort, energy on the border, and we're broke. And see, this is the problem. We are broke. The average
the Chinese can afford it.
$100.
Yeah,
okay, these people are spending $6,000 to get a coyote to take them to the border and get through here. Hey, it's free to get to the border, but once you get here, make them pay and take the money in, baby. Do like Rwanda does.
Yeah, but it ought to be a lot more than that. And they have to have marketable skills so they're not on the government tit. We shouldn't be taking welfare cases.
Hey, they probably do if you make the entry fee big enough, $5-10 grand. Come on, Dan. If they have to come up with $5,000 to $10,000 a head, then they have some skills to be able to make the money. And if they can't make the money, here's what you do: you close the bloody border. This is a capitalistic country. We're not interested in them. Stay in Mexico. Go back, make the money, then come talk to us. Make it real.
Running the border doesn't cost that much. I'm looking at it here, and what are we looking at? $20 billion for the border compared to our overall budget of what, $1 trillion?
It doesn't matter. We're 34 trillion in the hole. When you're losing $1 trillion every 100 days. We need to reverse.
Hey, Rick, along those same lines, hold on a second. Rick, along those same lines, and I just want to hear y'all's thoughts because, and hopefully Steve will be here tomorrow if Steve didn't make it today and everything. But Kamala Harris was here in Durham, North Carolina, to be exact, on Friday, and part of what she was talking about was there are very historical area called Black Wall Street. There were several Black Wall Streets around the country and all along those lines. But she was having an effort, and she had teamed up with a woman and minority-owned, I think actually, ironically, something that Shaquille used to be involved in, I guess still is involved with, venture fund and everything, to actually siphon some money into Black entrepreneurship, particularly in the tech field. So I was just wondering, is that a good investment or a bad investment in y'all's mind? Because apparently she's siphoning a bunch of money that will be allocated. Ironically, I think it's by the Royal Center, will be part of the administration of that. And my mother used to be on the board of the Royal Center at one point before she retired. But I was just wondering y'all's thoughts about this notion of this money coming in, and then it's supposed to support particularly minority businesses that are in the technology field.
It's fine and good. It's politically inconsequential. In California, we are lucky and unlucky that we are sidelined from a lot of political advertising and efforts because California is 2/3 Democrat, which means that, we're not a swing state, so people ignore us. Similarly, Black people in America are 12 or 13% of the population and vote more than 90% for Democrats. So trying to you want to hold Black people if you're running for Democratic office, but focusing a lot of your efforts on minorities is not going to swing the election. if you want to
Rick, hold on a second. On those same lines and everything, I talked to a friend of mine or an acquaintance. I've known him for a number of years. He's actually a professor, if I remember correctly, over at Duke University. But he comes, Dan, you'll love this. He comes out of the Marxist camp, because I have friends that are very much staunch capitalists. I also have friends that are staunch a number of other kind of political motivations. But we were actually talking about the Senate race, because what we were talking about is Mike Woodard, who is running for state Senate and is apparently being threatened and might actually be losing that race to Sophia Chitlik, who has some very active marketing and is doing an active marketing campaign. I think Mike might have pissed off some people when he ran for mayor and lost against a popular candidate. But one of the things that came up in the conversation was this notion of how much establishment money is coming into, and you were talking about the deep state earlier, is coming in to support Mike Woodard, because they're actually saying that it is going to be a toss-up in this particular race, partially because even though he's lost a lot of the endorsement of the different groups and the different PACs, he still has a lot of establishment money coming in that is supporting his campaign, and that may cause him to win, because he like Biden, is a career politician. I mean, he's definitely done other work in other places, but he's been in politics for a number of years, whether that was on the city council level or the state level. And I think he's even had some aspirations for the national level as well. But I just wanted y'all's take, everybody, including you, Dan, on establishment money and whether
including me.
Elections.
So, all right, it depends on what you mean by deep state. If by deep state, you, I mean, the country, when the U.S. became a nation, we had 3 million people. Now we have 340 million people. You need some government. And people who distrust all government, I mean, that's a fine starting point. But then you have to look at, what actually needs to be done to run the country. And deep state, if you want to talk about the money of like money in politics is deep state, that's a different thing. Where since Citizens United, which was 10 years ago now, more, money is free speech, and billionaires can spend tens of millions to get what they want, which I consider pretty deep statey.
Yeah, along those same lines, Toby, like I was telling them, I talked yesterday to Rand, and you may know Rand. He's a political activist that's over in Duke and all along those lines, but he was actually at the symphony event with his daughter, who is a Girl Scout troop member. But he was talking about the race between Sophia Chitlik and Mike Woodard, and he was actually saying that it might be closer than we expect because of the amount of establishment money, his word, not mine, that is coming into Mike Woodard's case and everything. But I just wanted your take on the notion of establishment money, and that being something that if you are a career politician like Mike Woodard, nobody can deny that he's been in politics for a number of years, can help you win, even if you've got a strong candidate that you are running against. Because Sophia Chitlik is actually a relatively new name. I think she's only been here in the area for about 10 years and all along those lines. But I just wanted your take on this notion of establishment money, because we talked about it before in other races, not just here in North Carolina, but throughout.
I mean, establishment money is just really it's just a negative term now, because everybody's looking for something new, and the easiest way to attack a person is by saying that they've been there forever, or utilizing something like establishment money. I disagree with that being a bad thing. I like going to a doctor who's been there for a while. I don't like going to a brand new doctor, because a brand new doctor might make a few more issues and might not be aware of some of the other extra complications. So I work with a doctor that I've been with for years. But in politics, we're always looking for, hey, I want this new individual who's never done anything policy-wise. So establishment money is just another coined phrase for that, I feel. And I mean, yes, there are politicians that have been there for years, which I disagree with. But being a establishment, I'm not really one for utilizing that term as something that means something negative against somebody. Yes, okay, so they've been there for a while, and sure, he or she may have somebody behind them forever, or been a part of the Republican or Democrat Party forever.
So if you want to move the needle in the election, two places to look. One is suburban white ladies who narrowly vote for Trump election after election. And you might be able to peel a lot of those off, talking about Roe being gone, and just get people worked up, because they're politicians, and and the people behind politicians are going after not just abortion, they're going after contraception, and some of the most lunatic mofos out there are going after recreational sex, saying sex should only be for baby making, and which is just solidly crazy. So you might be able to get people worked up about that. Also, you want to look at Latino people, in that they've been drifting right, and you need a coalition getting, you can't lose. I mean, in states like Texas, which for a long time was getting purpler and purpler, while the state government in Texas gets crazier and crazier if you look at the Ken Paxton stuff going on. But you can't turn Texas more bluish without winning over Latino voters.
Hey, along those same lines, Rick.
Honestly, I was just going to say, Rick is right with that. And I think one of the other things that we have to understand is it's all in messaging. I mean, if you do the honest look around messaging, that's around what is actually being put together policy-wise, it's a detriment to those who are actually great at the messaging point. For example, how Latinos are moving, more Hispanic individuals are, and truthfully, minorities are financially conservative as well. However, messaging-wise, if you look at what comes out of, for example, Greg Abbott and Donald Trump, and they're talking about what's the border, it's a border, it's a border. But if you dig down into exactly what they're talking about doing, it's detrimental to those individuals that are not only coming across the border, but also those that are here. Because of the laws that Greg Abbott had just signed in, we're back to the Show Me Your Papers Act. And that's what's going on in Texas. But the salesmanship and the actual messaging of what they're saying isn't that. And you keep flooding the area with messaging that is different than what is actually going on. It confuses individuals, and it makes individuals see or lean particular ways. So yes,
Jatovia, along those same lines and everything, we have a show that airs here on the network, Que Pasa Mujer, and I know that if you go to their Facebook page, you will see that there is actually a figure that they put out, and I am actually sometimes shocked by the figure, but I want to say that it is $3.2 trillion that the Latin population puts out in terms of their economic clout and all along those lines. So that is something they highlight on their shows, because a lot of times that is not something that I don't think either party much attention to as they probably should, because if we're talking about the economic issues that exist, that would be a sizable portion of money that exists.
Latino voters, Latinos as consumers of both politics and all products have been neglected for frickin' forever. If you look, it's a little better now, but if you used to look at, and it's still not great, at the advertising aimed at Latino people, it's so half-assed and lazy, because you hire a frickin' Chicago ad agency to do your campaign, and they do they aim at white people, and then they're like, well, what about Latino people? And then they do these stupid lazy ads. And yeah, if somebody needs to focus on this huge and growing, demographic segment.
Speaking of lazy ads, and I see we got, hopefully Steve can hear me and he'll join the conversation in a little bit, and all of that. But speaking of that, and all of those, yeah, I knew you were driving. But speaking of that, I was just talking about Sophia Chitlik versus Mike Woodard. But I'd love to hear everybody, because you talked about advertising, and I am not sure if it's done intentionally or accidentally. Because if it's done intentionally, it is very interesting tactic, but I have seen these ads that Sophia has been putting out that almost seem like they are repeat ads. So they're ads that seem to loop because you'll hear the ad go and then the same point will be made. So I'm not sure if she's doing that intentionally to get the point across or if it's accidental. So what is your theory around this, Jacoby? You're in the media space, but I know that a couple times I've heard this ad and her talking about her support for Planned Parenthood and her being a mother and a child advocate and everything. And then like 10 seconds later, the same point will be made and all along those lines. So it almost looks like it's looping, but it could be that kind of repetitiveness to get the message across kind of tactic as well. I'm never quite sure what I'm watching, and I don't know if you've seen that and if you have any thoughts and observations about it, because I know it definitely caught me off guard.
I mean, I haven't seen the ad, but that's what you do in any marketing, any political world. I mean, heck, Trump has said it from the podium multiple times. Every time he gets up there, the election was stolen. You know what? Now that's starting to seep in is that, to other people, the election was stolen, which it wasn't. So that is just marketing. So yes, people say particular things to try and drive home a point. They'll repeat it and repeat it and repeat it. And
It's called It's called the Russian fire hose model of disinformation. That if people only have a limited amount of band space, and if you just bam, 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 hit them with 300 messages a day, the message might be bullshit, but they don't have room in their people don't have room in their heads for anything else if all they get is garbage from you. And yeah, the ads are annoying, but they work. We have a legal firm in LA called Sweet James. They do a lot of advertising. Why are they called Sweet James? Nobody knows, but it sticks in your head because it's such a stupid name for a law firm. The spokesman has weird, curly, receding hair. He's an actor. He's not even a lawyer. They hired a guy who looks weird, so it frickin' sticks in your head.
That makes a lot of sense and everything. Hey, Steve, you had the pleasure of meeting Kamala and talking to her, and I think you might be trying to bring her to town. So share a little bit with us about that visit. I did mention to them this stimulus package that is supposed to come to the African-American business community, particularly those in the tech field. But as you're driving, if you'll share a little bit about your visit on this past Friday. I do know it impacted traffic because Durham is a small town, and even when I was catching the bus later in the afternoon, the traffic was still backed up. And I did talk to somebody that had gone to one of our popular restaurants and had actually had to wait because Secret Service and other people were setting up for the visit on Paris Street, where she stopped at a art gallery before going to the Venture Center.
Well, absolutely, folks. And I just want to let you know I've got my phone in my case, in my glove compartment in my car, so I'm driving safely. But hopefully you can listen to me. But
yes.
I'll begin with a quick joke. There was a guy accepting an award for distracted driving legislation in North Carolina, and he was accepting the award while he was driving on his phone, looking at the thing, and it was just absolutely hilarious. And they had Wi-Fi issues, and then the thing just completely exploded, and everyone was like, "Why would you be a senator talking about distracted driving while you're looking at the phone while you're driving on the road?" But anyway, real quickly, it was an interesting meeting. This was actually I met the vice president briefly, and we talked before she addressed the community, and the specific focus was on it was at the old Black Wall Street there at NC Mutual Insurance. I'm writing an article for TechWire this week on it, and it was about the $32 million coming in to venture capital firms from the North Carolina Rural Center.
Yes.
That would be dispersed into areas of disadvantaged, rural areas of the state. Typically entrepreneurs that have hard access, difficulty getting capital. And they selected 10 VCs. And it was a pretty interesting event. The vice president spoke very briefly. I was expecting she would make the announcement, but she didn't really do that. Might have been earlier. There was an event with venture capitalists and investors at an art gallery. So, Mark, it was pretty interesting. I mean, I think my concern is that there's just a lot of these positive messages, and there have been some good things done by the Biden administration, particularly carrying over some of the policies of Trump in terms of manufacturing jobs being created. There is a renaissance in manufacturing in America today, particularly in green areas, a lot of entrepreneurship in AI and different areas of the economy. But we talked about messaging. I think the Biden administration has been kind of all over the place. And I don't think they've been able to clearly articulate the 2 or 3 things they've done in the last 4 years. And I think that's going to be the challenge moving forward is, Biden had a good mandate coming in, or at least one. And now it's like, but anyway, it was a good event. A lot of interesting data shared about entrepreneurs and the importance of their role in the economy. So, and good news for North Carolina, venture capital money coming into the state.
Yep, definitely sounds.
I think Biden has a big opportunity coming up. Is it this week that he gives the State of the Union address?
Yes,
And
Thursday.
people
Thursday.
expect him to get heckled, and he might have a chance to show that, he's above all that or better than that, or that the hecklers are a-holes. Democratic messaging. The Democrats have done a lot in the past 3 years. They haven't communicated. People know nothing about Kamala Harris. They just know she's a smiley lady who gives speeches, and she broke more ties in the Senate than any other VP in history. They need to. I wish they would use more Obama campaign people. Obama's people seem to be good at political messaging.
I think
Yeah.
the other issue that we're running into is that the comparison between how Trump, the GOP, the bombastic, loud MAGA wing and everything, how loud that is and what that is today compared to how I think Biden and that the Democrat campaign is still years behind on understanding. And they're not as loud. And I don't think they were ever going to be as loud.
Jacoby, speaking of not as loud, because there's a major race. We were just talking about it with the swing state, and I know that one of our panelists is friends with one of the candidates along those lines, namely Josh Stein, and in that way. But definitely, that being said, once again, former President Trump did make the comparison to Martin Luther King, saying that Mark Robinson was like Martin Luther King's ×2. And all along those lines. So I just wanted your take on this, because this apparently is a race that is very much one that could potentially be a very close race, and definitely between somebody that is seen as liberal to moderate, that being Josh Stein, and one that is more, some people might say, moderate to ultra conservative, that being Mark Robinson. But I just wanted your take, because this is going to be a governor's race that and there are other candidates, and some of them could come out of the woodworks and be who will run. But right now, it looks like it's going to be Stein versus Robinson. But I just wanted your take, is there's a lot of spending money that is coming here as well, speaking as we were talking about with money and everything in that space.
Yeah, and I'll take a crack at that real quickly and let you all, as an analyst, what I'll say is that I think that this race is going to be very close. Even though I'm in Stein's inside circle, I'm a close friend of his. I'm working on the campaign as we speak, and I think he'd be a great governor. I mean, there's no question he's got the pedigree, the experience. I think the biggest challenge, though, is that a lot of these times these races are dictated by what's at the top of the ballot. And if Donald Trump were to win North Carolina, then more than 2 points, 3 points maybe, then that could pose significant challenges for Stein. Because the fact of the matter is that in order to win, he's going to have to get Trump supporters, like Roy Cooper. Now, he is being endorsed by Governor Roy Cooper. 85% approval, 89% approval rate in North Carolina, led North Carolina through the pandemic. Pretty interesting, right? I mean, I think that the question becomes, is it going to be enough? Will he do well with Black American? Black vote seems to be kind of light right now in the early voting. That could be a bad sign for Biden. And Biden's not as popular as he was 4 years ago, coming into North Carolina. So Mark, I think it's going to be. I still think it's Stein's to win, but I think we're looking at, the path to 51 for Robinson's going to be whether he can ride on Trump's coattails.
Can
Can
I
we-
talk about something that's crazy that's going on in California?
Yeah, before you get to that, I just
Senate
want to hear Jacoby's thoughts about the Mark Robinson race, but I did want to hear about California. But Jacoby, what's your take on the Stein Robinson race?
Actually, let's let Rick go, because I mean, it's still, there's craziness going in California, just like they're going in North Carolina, and we can tie them both together.
Go ahead.
So California has this runoff deal where there's mandatory runoff. You have your primary, or and after the primary, the top two vote getters for a position, in this case, senator, run again in the general. And so you have three big people running for senator. You've got two Democrats. You've got Adam Schiff, Katie Porter, against a very popular Republican, Steve Garvey. California is 2/3 Democratic. So what Adam Schiff did was run a ton of ads saying, I'm good, Steve Garvey's bad, he's too conservative for California. And his objective was it looked like anti-Steve Garvey, but it was secretly, or not so secretly, designed to get him more votes so he would come in second and kick Katie Porter out, because Adam Schiff wants to run in the general against a Republican, because that person will be easier to beat than another Democrat. So that's, and having done that, Steve Garvey is now winning in the opinion polling. He's pulled into the #1 space, even though we're a Democratic state, and even though Steve Garvey has zero political experience and has a history of kind of being a scumbag in his personal life.
And that kind of, in all honesty, ties together with what's going on in North Carolina. I mean, as much as and I think Steve pointed out well about Stein. Stein would be a great governor, but I think Stein, similar to Katie Porter and Adam Schiff, there's stuff that's going on in the background on the Democrat side.
I mean, also it's, you have to look at it from, and I've got about 2 more minutes, guys, but the other thing is that, Roy Cooper and Stein are very different animals, right?
Mhm.
I mean, Cooper came from the rural part of North Carolina. He only came to Raleigh after he became the state senator, majority leader, senator, attorney general. But he grew up on a farm. He grew up in the East. He connects well with rural voters, whereas Stein, even though he's trying, grew up in Chapel Hill, the son of a very liberal Jewish attorney. The Israel and Palestine issue also hurt Stein, because he's not really able to come out and talk about it, because he is Jewish, could be the first Jewish governor in the state. But at the end of the day, the bottom line is that, it's just a different race. And he spent time as attorney general, most of his time attacking the Trump administration and defending North Carolina against Donald Trump.
But
So-
Steve, along those same lines, a lot of the ads that I am seeing for North Carolina candidates, and like I said, sometimes when I'm not doing this pod TV and some of my other jobs like Hey Ty and other things, I am watching TV, and I see a number of ads, particularly from the Republican base, that are positioning themselves as anti-abortion or anti-border crossings, and a number of other things that are very much part of the Trump lexicon. They're also positioning themselves, because I know one candidate is totally positioning himself as running basically a Judeo-Christian campaign, because he's basically saying that he wants to bring back that kind of philosophy to the federal government and all along those lines. So I was just wondering, is that kind of political posturing going to work in the state of North Carolina or in the government in general in the country? Because I'm seeing it not just here, but
gonna work. It is working in terms of in North Carolina, because you have right now the immigration debate is huge. The abortion rights and women's rights, that's also the other huge one. The economy will end up splitting, but right now, because of the messaging, again, it's all about the messaging. Right now, the Republican Party is winning on the messaging on the immigration debate, even though they're the ones that canceled the $14 billion in the immigration deal that could have helped the border, that they said was an emergency, that they convinced everybody in the world that it was such a dire thing. But now we don't need to fix it until later because, oh, no, we can't trust. Now the whole thing is, oh, well, we can't trust Biden on it. So it's either a problem or it's not a problem.
But you need to look at the math on that deal, Jacoby. It would have let a million five.
No, it wouldn't. No, it wouldn't.
Border. Yes,
no, it wouldn't.
5,000 a day.
No, Dan, it would not. They put a cap on it at 5,000. Currently, 5,000 or at 5,000 a day. He could shut it down, send everybody back. So it does not let a million in as they're selling it. Again, it's messaging.
You have more than 5,000 hitting the border now, and that's just the ones they catch.
If you hold on, Dan. If you don't do anything, what's going to happen? They're still going to.
Here's the point, Jacoby.
But if you don't,
he's used executive orders to change things. So
no,
we created
Dan,
this mess. He has the authority. He has the authority to fix.
No, he does not.
Executive order. Yes, he does.
No, he does not.
He's just been
factually speaking, Dan. You can look this up.
I actually know the answer to this.
Okay, the answer in 2019, when Donald Trump tried to do the same thing because there was an immigration spike, what happened?
The court shot it down.
Exactly. So therefore, he does not have executive power. It would get shut down in the courts, just like Donald Trump tried. Again, the laws have to change. The messaging that you're spitting and that you're saying is just exactly that GOP messaging, that he has the authority. He does not have the authority. It gets tied up in the courts, just like Trump tried when the spike happened in 2019 and the beginning of 2020, when the spike was going on. What Trump kind of has the luxury of was the fact that COVID came in. So then the border and everything shut down due to COVID because we actually threw in Title 42. Title 42 was to shut down the border because we could not have transportation or anything going across due to COVID. COVID is no longer there. So
it is, though. I mean, he could try it again.
Yes.
But on top of that,
and we have fentanyl and everything else. And
Mexico is not willing to do a stay in Mexico thing. It's just these are the facts.
But
hold on a second,
hold on. Biden could follow a Trump strategy and just go ahead and issue the executive orders, let them get shot down, and at least he's done the messaging thing of making the executive order, even though they're
exactly.
So you would do so. The goal. Hold on.
Hold on a second. Kim had something you wanted to ask.
Mark, hold on. Just to retort that. So you're saying that we should make that Biden should make a political play that does nothing to the border at all and not point out the fact.
Well, he's ignoring the Supreme Court.
It's right. No, it would not do anything. And right now, we had an opportunity, Dan. We legitimately had an opportunity to do everything that the Republicans wanted to do, but they said no.
That's not true.
It is a fact. It is a fact.
I'll put it this way. When you have Republicans and Democrats, they have done nothing to help our country. Neither one of them, because all they do is angst at each other. All they do is fight each other.
That's true.
No unification. There's absolutely no unification. No president in this country has a chance to do anything right if he so desires. But that's been a problem for years. But I want to address something about some of the problems that we do have, like the recent shooting, or not shooting, but murder of the Georgia student.
Yep.
It took me back to history a little bit about what happened to Eve Carson here at UNC Chapel Hill. Okay. Now that crime wasn't just because of an immigrant being here that shouldn't have been here. That crime was because laws are not enforced. Laws are not enforced. That man should have been put in jail a long time ago, just like the two men that killed Eve Carson. And actually, a lot of people don't know this, but those two men that killed Eve Carson also killed another UNC Chapel Hill student that week. But they should have been picked up and thrown in jail when they had been pulled over, and they had warrants out against them. But the police didn't know about the warrants. Now they have a system that crosses over. But that man should have been in jail a long time ago because he had been arrested and charged for other things. So the problem isn't that that's occurring in all of this, not just with murders and things like that, is we are not enforcing the law. And I think I heard Jatovi say this many times already. We need to start enforcing our policies and enforcing our laws. We need to unify and stop fighting.
Yeah,
Hey,
we enforce via pretty white lady victims. That this is well known.
Oh, gee, thank you.
Well,
We die. We die.
You're a pretty white lady, so don't be
Collateral
a victim.
damage, right?
But the media, and we're going on to the media show in 10 minutes.
A racist thing
Media
to
needs
say.
to be called out
No, in
for
10
its
minutes.
terrible coverage habits. For instance, not just with a white woman getting more coverage when she gets murdered than somebody from some other race, but like there's so much coverage of Biden's gaffes. Trump has called the current president Obama 9 times in the past 6 months at rallies and such.
Well, that's because that's who's running the country right now is Obama.
No, it's not, Dan. That is just an idiotic thing to say.
I mean, so
Oh, really?
yeah, like Trump supporters like to say that, oh, well, he's making a political point, and then liberals are like, no, he gets confused. And there's been,
Hey, just really quickly, hold on a second. Kim brought up a organization. We were talking about establishment earlier, but I'm not that familiar, and I know Steve's not here. But what is LMS and all in that nature? Because I do know that there is campaign money that sometimes goes in, and you also talk about the prescription drugs, and that is a major problem that exists when it is legal prescription drugs and all in that space. But I just wondered if you could clarify for those that might be watching and wanting to know about that, Kim.
Well, we'll have to discuss LMS tomorrow or another day because it's a long story, but and a long definition. But I feel like that they are a major part of our organized crime being pushed through legally here in North Carolina. They're just a bunch of pirates, along with the political officers allowing them to come into our state. And again, it's just, to me, they're legalizing crime. As far as the drug situation, a lot of the attorney generals banned certain drugs to be prescribed because they're trying to get rid of opioid overdoses. But all you've done is driven some of these people who actually need the drug to the streets. Another problem we have is that the drugs, fentanyl especially, is not coming across the border like you think, across the backs of the people coming into this country. That's too much for them to bring and carry, but it's coming in through Amazon. Okay, it's coming in through our airports. It's being packaged now as meds that people are ordering online, thinking that they're getting a certain drug that they need because they can't get it in the state. So they're ordering it online. So fentanyl is being migrated into our country via online ordering. And I know this for a fact because when I went to the Super Bowl, this was a big topic, a huge topic. And we had presenters come up and tell us this is where it's coming from and this is the problem, and we need to stop it there at that gate. And we just need to maybe stop the online drugs coming into this country, and they're not. So the other problem is there's a thing called gas station heroin. Go Google it. It's a drug that they're allowing to be shelved. It's not a drug, it's a drink with a drug in it that reacts like heroin, and the kids are getting addicted to it. And our country is allowing it to be shelved on all the convenience stores' shelves. Also, if you want to help with the opioid problem and maybe save a life, Narcan can be purchased at almost any grocery store that I have walked into recently that has a pharmacy. And I think most pharmacies now sell it. It's expensive, but maybe we can convince.
It should be every place. You shouldn't be able to walk down the street without sticking yourself with a Narcan pen by accident.
Yeah, but along those same
Right.
lines,
But I mean, I'm just saying it's available everywhere now. Whereas last year, many people died because the lack thereof. I was even in a restaurant with someone who I didn't know they were on drugs and they overdosed at our table. And we were just in a restaurant. We had no idea that they had came to the restaurant already OD'd basically, but they were talking weird. And so the end result was almost fatal because there was no Narcan in the facility and we had to wait for the ER. So I mean, it's a bad situation out there, but you know what? If we just unify and find the solutions, right? Find the solutions. Don't
definitely find solutions. Speaking of solutions, and I know you're winding down. We forgot. So, I was gonna let you have the last word, but just really quickly and everything. Speaking of finding solutions and all in that space, we've got when we talk about the fentanyl, we forget that it is actually coming from two directions, because a lot of the conversation about it is coming from Mexico. But it's my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, that there's a significant amount of it that is actually coming from our northern border as well. And we very, very seldom talk about the fact that quite a bit of it is coming down from Canada and all along those lines.
The precursors come from China, and then they're made into fentanyl. And fentanyl is highly smuggled. A wad of fentanyl the size of a softball is enough to get 1 million people high or kill them. And so, yeah, you can, and it's cheap. So even if some doesn't get through, there's a lot of ways to get a softball over the border.
Just to point out, and just to touch on what Kim said, talking about fentanyl coming through the ports of entry, just to touch on what Rick just talked about, and what you just talked about, Mark, in terms of where it's coming from, because it is coming through the ports of entry. And they killed a bill that would have helped put more money in the ports of entry and actually giving more individuals the opportunity to stop these drugs, because it is necessary to stop them. But the reason that Mark, for example, Rick touched on it earlier, how where the eyeballs go and where our media goes, there aren't as many brown people in Canada coming through. So the eyeballs are not going to be focused heavily on Canada. It's all focused on Mexico and where they're coming from to take our jobs, because that is the way the messaging happens in our country. And that's just the way it is. It's just it's about being honest. Again, Kim, I'm staying on this thing about honesty this year, because let's be honest, the reason why we're not worried about the ports of entry of Canada is because not many brown people are coming from Canada, even though that is untrue.
I order a lot of my drugs from Canada.
I get some of my drugs from India.
Where's Sasha?
So I think
I go to Walmart.
Isn't the border?
Speaking of that, and we're getting ready to wrap up. And all of those lines. Speaking of which, we're getting ready to wrap up in about
northern border longer than our southern border?
Yep, a lot longer.
And the northern border, you can just walk across. I bet you in a zillion places.
You can walk across by. I had friends that did it. You can walk. Well, they tightened it up at one point before the pandemic. But you could walk across by Portland and Seattle and a number of places. I remember years ago having to send some friends of mine their passport because they had gone to Canada and had left it at home. So I had to do a mimeograph thing or a copier and then send them a copy so they could actually get back across, because they had forgotten to take their correct paperwork. And this was before the pandemic and the tightened security that was going on. Just really quickly, and I know we're getting ready to wrap up, and we could talk about this on tomorrow and maybe even on economics and everything else, but there is a country, and I know Chris Greco is not a big fan of the country, but maybe people will not just be going to different states to get their abortion, but maybe they'll be going to different countries, because apparently France is getting ready to enshrine abortion into their law. So I brought that up earlier. So maybe people, if they've got the wherewithal, will be flying to France, since apparently it's going to be very legal to have an abortion in the country of France and all along those lines, because they're actually getting ready to make that part of their rule of law and all in that space. That'd
be fantastic. France should offer abortion vacations. When they get an abortion in 2 days, hanging out in Paris would be delightful.
Well, I think we would solve a lot of problems if we just butt out of other people's business and let people make the right choices for themselves.
Exactly.
And if somebody needs medication, then the state attorney general, Josh Stein, needs to butt out and let the doctor prescribe it and not play doctor, and let the person get it legally rather than have to go to the street. If a woman needs an abortion, then Josh Stein needs to butt out of it. And so do all the other legal beagles and know-it-alls. And let the woman make a choice for herself. If she ends up not doing what your religion belief is, then let her deal with God later. But that's her choice.
Let her
we need to remove theology. But hear me out. This is not pro-life choice. because nobody cares about that child after they're born. And I had this discussion with several women over the weekend. It's interesting because I didn't even bring it up like this. And they all said the same thing. Why are these lawmakers making all these women do this? And a lot of the women who end up giving birth, who are trying to do what they think is right, end up with a debt on their back that nobody's helping them with. Nobody. So there's because that child suffers the rest of
we
their
would have
life.
followed that prescription, I wouldn't have been born, because my grandmother wanted me to be aborted, right? So, my mom, thank God, didn't do it, but that
Was your mom married?
But that,
choice. No, she
that
wasn't
is
married.
her choice. That was
her
your life.
choice.
It
That was
doesn't
her
matter because
She
whatever
chose
happens to the lady who lives next door to me should be her choice, not mine, not
right.
yours.
That's
That-
right.
Well,
My
and you know
mother-in-law
what?
wanted to abort my husband when
if
she got
she-
pregnant.
The
when she was
fetus has
50.
rights too. The fetus
she
has
didn't.
rights too.
The fetus
under the law,
doesn't even have a brain.
The fetus
it-
isn't even
similar to
tax,
you, right?
a
Not
tax
every.
deduction.
doesn't-
Again, here's a fact. Here's a
Like
fact.
you,
Here's a fact
right?
for you, Dan. Not every fetus becomes born. So therefore, you're talking about, hey, this fetus who I don't even know will live has more rights than the woman who is alive.
No, they don't
So
have the
with
moral
all
right.
those things to tell you, we can change.
Even Roe v.
It
and
does.
even Roe v.
It
Wade,
does.
Colby. I mean,
To
don't
tell
you
me
know,
we can continue this discussion
And
on
Roe v.
tomorrow
Wade
because we got economics to go to and all on those lines. So
Doesn't-
hopefully we'll see
it's not
more of
up
this
to you.
conversation
That's
on
right.
It's up to
tomorrow.
her.
But we've got to depart right now.
Start
So
adopting.
hold on. We've got to depart, but we'll go to economics Monday. So
Start
thanks,
adopting.
you're alive.